theme song for the Gear Podcast after 2 long weeks. What's going on, Uncle Leon?
Not too much, mate. How about yourself? You enjoying the new studio layout we've got going on here?
Oh, mate, how is this? It's like it's a birthday party or something. I hope you people are
background.
Yeah, we can thank Uncle Jace for for telling us about this program. Probably could have saved a bit of time and effort and up the production values months ago, but hey, it's looking good, mate.
This is all part of the learning process, isn't it, mate?
Yep. This was previously only available to our Patreon subscribers, and now it's free. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but it looks good, man. What's going on? It's my birthday next weekend, but that's not what we're here to talk about and celebrate today. What have you been doing?
Oh, what have I been doing? A lot of videos. Been doing a few shows here and there.
What you do on Tuesday?
What did I do on Tuesday, Tundy? It's a very, very good question, mate. I think there was something that was potentially involving friend of the podcast, Todd Johnston, but he couldn't make it.
Yep. You, me, a couple of other boys, Crown, and
Crown Casino.
We played some songs.
A room.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Nose beers. There were no nose beers. Absolutely no nose beers.
Not at least coming from the band.
There weren't even any beers.
Yep. Someone got proposed. No, we played a gig for Melbourne Cup, and it was a gig like any other. Nothing really to write home about or talk about, so we should probably move on from that. But you know what? I left there and went and got my 5150 back and my AC30 back, and I'm yet to try them because it's been a very busy couple of days. So
that was going to be my first question. How are the amps now they've been repaired and serviced? And well, you haven't heard them, but what did you get done to them? What needed to be done?
Well, the 5150, when I bought it about a year and a half ago, the presence knob wasn't on it. Like it had. Oh man, I forgot to tell you. Is it worth showing you? Yeah, I'll show you in a second. I've got to go get something to show you. The presence knob on this 5150, and it's a script one, so whenever that was, like early mid-90s or something. Presence knob was gone, so I needed that replaced. I've actually used the amp quite a bit. Have you played it? I don't remember.
Yeah. It's great.
Sounds really good.
Great.
Sounds like a 5150. And wherever the presence was set was completely fine. So I was still able to dial in a pretty reasonable tone and used it for a bunch of stuff. I think last year. I don't know if I've used it much this year. But that's back. And then the AC30 was just sounding a bit weird and kind of needed a birthday. Because I bought that amp. I mean, like all my amps, they all come secondhand. But the AC30, I think I got in like 2010. Really, like, reasonably cheap. And a bit broken. I put 4 new tubes in it, 4 new power tubes. And that seemed to make it okay. I used it for years. And
it's a head, right?
It's just the AC30 head, that's right. Just a custom Classic 2. And then one of the preamp tubes went. I got it working again, but yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't really sounding right. So it's been retubed, so that's cool. He's done a couple of other little bits and pieces to the inside of it, of which it's written on the paper, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But it'd be fun to try it. To be honest, like I've been using the Cherrytone a lot, so I kind of have that bass covered now. I don't know if I'll sell the head, this AC30 head, but it's nice to have the options, I suppose. Man, I did this, so I'm going to just talk about myself for a minute.
Hey, that's why we're here.
I did a couple of singles on the weekend, and it was nice because, I have all this stuff. I have all this stuff. You can see it behind me. I'm always buying stuff. Not only that, I've got the means by which to play all the stuff conveniently with the amp selector and the pedals and the whatnot. And then I've got so many cabinets. But sometimes it's too hard, mate. It's you spend all this time and effort and you set it up, and then you don't remember how it works. So
it's like my rack.
Yeah. And so currently it works. Not only does it work, I used like 5 different amps last week, if you can believe it. It just was fine. It was exactly as seamless and as easy as I'd always had intended it to be. So happy days.
You got the Marshall cooking on a few recordings.
Oh man, the Marshall I've used a bit in the last week on a couple of different tracks, a couple of different bands, and it's so good. And it's pretty much hasn't changed. The settings have been the same. When you want more gain, you flick the Jake switch. So to do a solo, maybe flick the Jake switch, and then otherwise it's just been in the other setting, and then maybe roll the volume back on the guitar for a bit. It's been really, really good, man. So, yeah, that's pretty much what's happening in Troyland. So, just before I forget, I did something real dumb the other day, mate, and I'm gonna go get it, and I'll do it live on air.
Tell me all about it.
So just give me 2 seconds, all right?
And here we go. The magic of television. Troy has walked off the stage. And, now because we've got a brand new way of doing this, you can all see my not so wonderful face right up here. Sipping a bit of rooibos tea. I should save this part of what we're talking about for when Troy comes back. But I will remind everybody, tell your mates about the podcast. If there's topics you'd like to see us discuss in the future, well, Troy's plugging himself back in. We appreciate it. And you can follow the Gear Podcast on Instagram as well. We are at the Gear Podcast. And Troy, that was an amazing segue, mate. I got the little advertisers. Look at this.
Did you?
What have you got for us, mate?
Mate, okay. I'm going to show you something. And you might have already seen the unit, so surprise will be ruined. But let me tell you. Do you recognize this?
Hang on, let's get a nice little close-up on that, mate. So, I recognize that, all right.
Do you?
I certainly do.
What's that from?
From a rack unit, right?
Correct.
Maybe from a little effecty kind of unit?
Yep, sounds pretty good.
Maybe an Effectron?
Oh, mate. Do you mean like this Effectron?
Yes.
With the knobs completely snapped off?
Oh my gosh. Let's take a look at that one,
shall we? Supposed to be one there. There's supposed to be one there. And, I had it on the floor a couple of days ago, and I was in a bit of a hurry moving stuff around. So I stepped on the thing, completely snapped off 2 knobs. So that's cool. I paid $50 for this thing like 13 years ago, and I've probably used it 4 times. So it's not the end of the world, but... these Effectrons, you did a whole video about them, didn't you?
I did a video with that very one you're holding in your hands right there, mate. The
Delta Lab
Effectron.
Is it
Delta Lab Effectron or Effectron Delta Lab? I can never remember.
Delta Lab is the brand, Effectron is the unit. And I believe there's an Effectron 1 and an Effectron 2. So,
yeah, and I believe the Delta Lab comes from the fact that it's using adaptive delta modulation to sample the delays in there. So the cheapest one I can see online at the moment is $250, mate. So,
down the drain.
You multiply your money by 5 on there. It is a classic one. It's really, really good. I'm pretty sure the Strymon Dig, the ADM mode is, I think a lot of people think it's based on a 2290, but I'm pretty sure it's based on that Effectron because there's a photo on the Dig development thing where you can see a rack and there's definitely an Effectron in there and there's definitely a Roland SDE as well. So I'm pretty sure they're the modes. There's
a nerdy pedal company that the guy loves them as well. Like I think you sent me an article about it.
Cattle and Bread,
yeah. And
he's got lots of great articles about just kind of funky old stuff, whether it's old MXRs or EHX stuff, and then there's some kind of hidden gems like that. They do the Bell Epoch Deluxe, like the kind of tape delay style thing that I think a lot of people love. I'm pretty sure Eric Johnson uses them. So when that happened, everybody lost their mind. It was like, oh my God, we need to check one of these things out. I've never tried any of their stuff. I feel like they may be in the company where the founder passed away not too long ago.
All right.
I forget it was very unexpected, whatever it was. And the company's still continuing on. So that's not such a nice note, but it's nice that if this is who I'm thinking of as well, the Gear Podcast, always well researched. Have you, November's been, I had a mental end of last month prepping videos for this month. There was so many new things coming out. Anything that has caught your eye in particular in terms of like new amps, pedals, thingamajigs?
A couple of things have come out. There's one software thing that I like the look of that I'll demo, and there's one hardware thing that I like. So we might as well talk about the hardware thing because that's the amp related. Kinda like the look of that new 2 Notes Opus.
I think that's a really cool idea. I still haven't watched any of the videos. I've just seen some pictures of it, and it's like, it's the FM0 idea.
Yeah.
Like,
pretty much, man.
Have basically nothing on it, but make it really powerful.
It's because I had the Cab M, which was really great. I just didn't really need to use it, so I sold it. I traded it for that SV cab, or what is it called? The Studio 2x12 Marshall cabinet thing.
Yes.
That plus a bit of cash. But form factor was really good. It was built really well. So this thing being that with a little bit more amp sim in it, I could sort of find a use for that, I think. I'm always trying to find something. Sorry.
They added some amp sims in a firmware update to the Cab M. Hey, it was originally just an IR loader and power amp sim, but they added like a few basic clean.
There was always one like clean preamp sort of thing in there, just like a pedal platform sort of thing, which I guess that's still what this is. But now you got your Fendery thing and your Vox thing and your Marshall thing and maybe one other. What's the other thing that's in there? Oh, there's like a 5150 type of thing. So you can sort of just run it for, the gamut of gain.
Yeah. So, I saw there's a Pete Thorne video and a Michael Nielsen video I've got saved to watch. So I figure between those two, I'll actually figure out how it works.
Yeah, I think I watched Michael Nielsen's one. It was really good. But yeah, looks good.
Official friend of the podcast, Michael Nielsen.
That's right. It's not too expensive. I want to say it's around 500 Australian, give or take a little bit.
Really?
So maybe 600, but
that's awesome.
There's been a couple of things. Like we spoke about the Friedman thing the other week, so that was pretty
IRX.
IRX, and this is different because obviously it's all digital, but for the space that it can fill in your little rig, I think it would be quite valuable. I was thinking about even I'm always trying to think of solutions for when I track bands. I say live in the studio, but just putting a guide track down, right? Yeah. And I did it the last few weeks where, drummer's there on headphones and then the rest of the band is surrounding on headphones and everyone's got their own little mixer. There's not really space to put a lot of guitar amps in the... There's not a lot of space to put the guitar amps in the room without there being lots of spill. There's one little airlock. Right. So I ended up DIing guitars and bass and putting plugins on it, and that's fine. But sometimes people do use their pedal boards for certain gain things. They can be a bit hit and miss in front of the plugins. If there's a platform that is good and usable and capable, like the Opus or the Friedman or whatever, I think that's not a terrible thing to have one or two of them just hanging around for that case.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good point where, I know you mentioned you're building a pedal board for somebody where they've got a bunch of different boosts and drive pedals on there and, doing it on the board versus having your amp or your amp sim. It's a good example that not everybody approaches getting a guitar sound the same way.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are just fundamentally, the sound is the amp. If you want a different sound, get a different amp. Whether exactly. That's through, using a different actual physical amp or doing a different patch in a modeler. But yeah, man, I mean, not everyone does that. Some people love pedals for some reason. No, not for some reason. Pedals are cool. And I have, speaking of pedal board, I'm building a pedal board for somebody, and I've got a significant collection of bougie guitar pedals just sitting in the studio. And I played with some the other day, and they sound good. I'm not.
Is one of them a TS10?
No. What's the Matthias 10?
The Tube Screamer.
Oh,
not Matthias.
Oh,
not Matthias 10. That'll be.
I was like, yeah, who's Matthias? Like, which Matthias? Yeah. No. So I've got Nordvang, I think is a thing.
Right. That's yep.
Yeah. So that's I believe it's got 3 buttons on it. So I think one's a blues breaker, one's a clon, and one's a tube screamer. The tube screamer might be a TS10, maybe not a TS9.
That's what. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think it's supposed to be the John Mayer special sort of thing, or in that maybe they do one that's supposed to sound like John Mayer, and this is a similar pedal. But that was pretty cool. I've also got a Brown Audio Protein. That's pretty cool.
I've heard they're awesome. Is that a what's the thing called? I've demoed one, and it's one of the few drive pedals I've tried.
Nobles ODS?
Yes, there's a Nobles. I actually still haven't tried a Nobles in here.
I think it's that and something else.
It's like a channel strip thing. Yeah, one side's a Nobles, one is the... Oh, man, why can't I remember this? Right.
I think it's a blues breaker, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something different. But that was cool. And then the other one is Thorpe the Duke.
Oh, yeah.
The Dane. The Dane. Yeah, the Dane, not the Duke. I'm thinking about Jon Landé again. Dane. Yeah, it's the guy from that show, the YouTube thing. What's his name?
Anderson's. Danish Pete.
Danish Pete.
His signature pedal, right? Yep.
It's fine. They're all fine. They're all completely fine. They're all completely usable things.
Hudson Broadcast. That's what I'm thinking of, Troy.
The Neve channel strip. That's supposed to be the Neve channel strip one. Yeah. No,
I borrowed one of those recently. That's actually a sick boost pedal. I really, really, really liked it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rude. Like there's so much. It's one of those things where it's something for pushing a gain stage.
Right.
And I really like the way it worked, and it was one of those things where I try a lot of drive pedals. I think I'm probably going to retire from demoing drive pedals after this year. There's just too many of them. And I know what I like and what I don't like, but that was one that really, really surprised me. But yeah, I think maybe one side of the protein is that.
It could be, yeah. I mean, what do you listen for with a drive pedal? Because I don't know what you like. I can probably tell you what I like, but what do you like?
Yeah, so for me, most of the time it's like, what does it sound like when you push a Marshall? That's the only thing in life that matters. And I get that obviously lots of people use non-Marshall amps and kind of driving them is a different thing. But for what I say, for example, with the Hudson, what I liked about it was you've kind of got that flat gain thing. So you can turn it up and it's kind of like turning up the amp gain. But when you back off the volume control, if you set the amp to the same point on the gain control and then back off the volume control, it's not the same as backing off the volume on the gain. So you can sort of like set the amp gain, especially on a Marshall, a bit lower. So the bright cap is going to have more of a say especially when you roll your volume control down.
Right.
Like, that's more of a thing. You have a bit more of that jangle. And then you almost have this more like linear behavior between guitar volume control and pedal. So you set the amp slightly cleaner, use the pedal almost like turning up the amp gain control, but then when you turn down your volume control, it's not the same. So that's one thing, one very convoluted thing. It's the old Hendrix fuzz thing or the treble booster thing people would do. So I like that. And then the other thing I liked on the broadcast was there's a bass cut on there. So if you just want to use it for gain, you can crank the shit out of it and then turn that, and you kind of tighten up the low end. So, I mean, I've got a board here just stacked with loads of drive pedals on it. And I mean, I've got a 2-in-1 pedal on there by Eris Effects. One is a tube screamer and one is the TC integrated preamp.
Oh yeah.
So, do you want to turn your Recto or your 5150 into like a gent machine?
Yep.
They're the two ways you do it. There's an SD one on there. There's a Crowther Hotcake I like because it's sort of get a clean boost out of it, or you can use it like a fuzz. There's the Anarchy Audio Workhorse, which just makes things sound better, which I like. So yeah, I think I like one thing I like is that it either gives you a lot of control and like when you use an EQ as a boost, that sort of thing, or that it does something with, it kind of messes up the guitar amp interaction and it changes stuff. So, but in terms of like the fundamental drive sound, I've played some amp in a box pedals, which I think are really, really good. Revival Drive's great at that. There's a few Greek companies who make some really good amp in a box stuff, Crazy Tube Circuits and VS Audio, and that plane's really, really close overhead. Everybody can hear that. VS Audio, and what was the other one in there? Sakalis Audio Works. They make a pedal called the Nerve, which sounds like a Recto. But again, I still feel like with all of those things, the starting point of like whatever cleanish amp you're using imparts the majority of the character.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean,
again, because I like Marshalls and Boogies, they're bringing 90% of what I like already.
Yeah, I've sort of found I never get a sound out of a pedal that gives me the same satisfaction as what I get out of an amp. So it's always a little bit of a disappointment to try at least for me, just to do like an amp in the box pedal or something like that. And even plugins, I sort of prefer to have an amp sim plugin or digital recreation of something.
Of the thing.
Because it just feels more comfortable to what I enjoy. So
I do like if you're doing a gig where you're playing like the majority of the gig clean, and you just want to have a nice smooth solo sound, then like a pedal in front of that clean amp can do that really well.
Yeah,
I think. But if the majority of your sound is this thing that we like, which is like it's a big hairy character sound most of the time.
Yeah.
Or even if it's not, if it's like a Vox or a Matchless thing, but it's got, you think here it is, Troy. Here's your sound, right? And it's a box, and that's the clean sound. And like classic distorted guitar amps add this like extra stuff around it, this like fuzz, right? And fizz and all that stuff. And that's important. Whereas with a pedal, you can't put that in somehow. Like the amp is providing this a really clean amp to me, pushing the whether it's like the amp preamp itself or the phase inverter or the power amp or getting it in a spot where it's driving the speaker in a particular way. And I'm not talking about like non-linear stuff like distortion, but just like where, you get that point where you're starting to run out of headroom.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where the magic happens on a lot of distorted guitar amp sounds. Even when people are like, oh, rectifiers and SLOs are mostly preamp gain, that's the character. It's like, no, it's, you get a Soldano and you put it on 6 and something happens that you can't recreate with a pedal.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think what I was going to say is for me, because I like distortion, like distorted amps so much, and I like to run amps pretty hot because it's always the most satisfying. The amount of distortion or character that a boost adds is semi-negligible because it's just a bit more.
Yeah.
And not that there isn't a difference between them, but if it's like you line up 3 different boosts and whatever, it's rare that I'm like, oh, finally, I've found it. After all these years, all I was missing was this, whatever boutique thing is going on. I mean, they'll provide a bit of it, but it's like 5%, 10% of the tone. I like what you're saying, like being able to run an amp a little like cleaner and hit the boost and all that sort of stuff. Yep, that's cool. To me, like this is stupid to talk about, but on my HX Stomp, I guess I kind of do that a little bit more for some of the tones I have to get. And that's cool. I guess I get it in that context. I think what I really like, am I dropping out or is that, no, sorry.
No, you sound great on this end, man.
Okay, I thought I heard a couple of little dropouts. What I do like about certain boosts is just the compression, which I never really understood that.
Yes.
Playing slightly cleaner, using a cleaner drive pedal or whatever, just to take some of the spike off, because I've always found that with Fender amps and Voxes, just like that extra little bit of chime, which some of it is tone related, like tone control related, some of it's guitar tone control related. It's a lot of places where you can sculpt a sound, but yeah, just having a pedal in there to maybe narrow the bandwidth of the sound, maybe just drop down those spikes a little bit. I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it, is like anything you put in there is only going to take away. You can't add bandwidth with a pedal or something like that. It's always going to run into those built-in limitations of the amp. But sometimes the amp has too much bandwidth or headroom, and the changing the feel is really important. I think that's another big thing for a lot of players is, playing a Fender Deluxe with a Strat is a great sound, but you put a Tube Screamer in there with the drive really low and maybe the level up a little bit, and like just to that point where it pushes the amp a little bit harder, but then you don't have to like work so hard on the guitar. Or you can then, back your volume control off a little bit, and it's sort of like the pedal's off, you've got a very, very clean. The pedal's on, you've got just a little bit of dirt. When you wind your volume control up, then you've got your solo sound. That's like another cool way to work it.
Yep.
And again, it's like, depending on the style of music you play as well, like if you're playing in an indie band or something like that, and you are using a lot of time-based effects and things like that, and having a dedicated, being able to just have your pedal board and take a cable and plug it into a clean amp, and then when you're like, oh, in the chorus, I want it to be louder and dirtier, I'm going to step on a drive pedal, and then for the rest of the gig, I don't really need that sound. Rather than, well, I need a 2-channel amp and I need to do 4 cable method and all this kind of stuff. It's
but some of these pedal boards, man, they're not convenient to set up. They're not convenient to change all these sounds. It's a workout. It's a workout that I'm not prepared to do. Like any sort of workout.
Anything more than 3 drive pedals is, it's massive overkill.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you need to get certain sounds, I guess it's up to you. It's how you decide to sculpt your tone. I'm just, I don't know. I don't think I think because singing as well. It's just, I can't think about both those things. I can either do, like, that's thinking about 3 things. Thinking about playing the guitar and singing is hard enough, but then like, I better chuck all these pedals on. Man, I find it hard enough to go from like a clean to a dirty sound on my AX8. It was like so dumb. So getting back to it though, that Opus thing, it looks really cool. I'd really like to try one out. There's a few of those little pedals, like between that, the IRX, even the TC, like the little TC amp in a box pedals, those look kind of interesting to me. That's more than a...
UA did the Lion as well. They're kind of like finally the Marshall.
So those to me are different. Oh, am I still on? Hello? I've lost audio. Anyway, hopefully it'll come back on. There we go. Yeah, those pedals to me are different than the other Ampere box where it's like, because I had one, right? The Wampler Plex Distortion, I think it was.
Yep.
And that was a really cool pedal. And I like the sound of it and everything. But that versus like your full recreation of a circuit,
Yes.
like digitally and whatever. That to me is a bit more, well, yeah, that other style, while it's not terrible, it just doesn't give me the same sort of feel as like plugging in, or like, I don't enjoy the concept of it as much as I do like something that's going to recreate the entire signal flow, I suppose. So
yeah. And like the UA stuff as well, you know, there's stereo in and stereo out. So again, if you've got someone with a stereo board that you're recording and that's part of their sound, and, you know, they want that rather than have to set up 2 amps just to track something, you could just plug them straight into like the Vox or the Fender version or the Marshall version of that and be like, yep, there you go. There's a backline sound. You know, you're not having to worry about like the gain staging thing with plugins, or again, setting up multiple amps, or having to do it later if it's part of the sound and part of the playing experience.
We'll move on from this, but just I think quickly before, the one thing about the Opus that it's just so stupid. I've never played one. I'm sure it's great. The one thing I wish it had would maybe just be a bit of delay or something in there.
Man, okay, this is Tone X is the same. Where, what's the deal, bro? Why didn't you put an effects loop in there, or just put it in a delay? You know, reverb's awesome. It's great having built-in reverb, but if I'm going to be using that box to record direct, I'll just use a reverb plugin. It's going to sound way better than whatever they can cram in there. But if I'm going to play live, I can live without reverb. It'd be sick just to be able to go like, hey, button 1, rhythm sound, button 2, you know, boosted sound with a little bit of delay. Happy. That would get through the gig. But no, you got to like turn the pre-delay up on the reverb or something, and it's not the same.
Yeah, because the Tone X one, can you run that as a USB interface as well?
I believe so.
If you can, I mean, that's a bummer to not be able to put your like bougie like delay or your Strymons or what, your Meris delays or something in and record it when you've got otherwise really great amps. It's just, man, there's no, if your guitar's going in the front and then it's on a USB cable into the computer, that's a bit of a missed opportunity. But it's the Tone X, I don't think that's got a loop in it as well, but I don't think it's a USB interface. It's not like you can run it anyway, or maybe you can. I don't think you can, but yeah, it's also funny. Like, I guess it doesn't matter that much, but it's I think it's only a mono output on that thing too. It's got a reverb in it, but it's only like a mono reverb, which is, I guess it's fine. At the end of the day,
it's fine.
Like,
for the price point,
it's fine.
What more do you want out of life? There are a few other, I got a Microcosm recently, which I think you should definitely borrow at some point as a studio thing, because there's this like level of uncontrollability and randomness to it where I feel like you can just play stuff and then chop it up later for, like we've done a lot in the studio with weird pedals where, okay, the song's done, let's do a layer of just weird stuff and, it can be blended for effects. But a Hologram, they put out something called the Chroma Console. I think that's what it's called. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, cool. Like a bunch of like hipster colors and probably lo-fi effects. But I watched the video and I was like, oh, that's really, really clever. Like the stuff that it does in terms of, so there's one thing on there, like cool things you can do when you twist a knob on a pedal and like crank the delay feedback up or something. It has a function which lets you learn those knob, the pedal will learn those knob assignments. So if you've got a thing where you're like, cool, I want to sweep a filter or I want to sweep delay feedback or something like that for effect, you can do that and then trigger it.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And again, stereo in and out, and it's MIDI, and there's some, it's something I looked at it and it's like, to get one in Australia is like $700, which is a lot for kind of tiny mini effects pedal. But it seems to be, rather than do what the Stomp does or what a bunch of other things where it's like, it's chorus and it's delay and reverb, it's more like you got a bunch of like character effects in there.
Is it USB at all for editing this stuff, or is it all MIDI?
I think that there's USB-C on it. I know that. Mate, bring it up. You should look it up and we can drag it in.
Mate, new technology.
You know, we got some magic happening here with this. So that was cool.
What's it called?
The other thing,
Micro
hologram chroma.
Oh, hologram chroma. Okay.
Yeah, and like they do cool stuff. Like the microcosm is a cool pedal. I thought it was just going to be kind of hipster garbage, but it's so fun to play.
Hey, it can still be hipster garbage.
It can still be hipster garbage and sound great. Exactly.
Is it the Chroma console?
Yes, that's the one. I was probably calling it Chroma Key or Kodachrome or something.
Chroma Key, isn't that an
absolute?
Oh, hang on. Oh, that's the one. I'm just closing a bunch of tabs so that they're not open when I share this screen. Not that I'm not looking at anything bad, just so everyone's aware. But I just want to be make certain. How do I do this? Oh, I know how to do it. Yes.
You just pull down all those websites where you've got the Eureka Stockade flag pinned.
Okay, let's work this out. Present. I feel like a 75-year-old man trying to do this. Chroma console. Here we go. Share.
Man, I feel like a 75-year-old man when I get up in the morning.
Is that sharing?
Here we go.
There we go. Chroma console.
There it is.
Yeah, look at this, everyone that's listening on the podcast app. Oh,
if you're listening,
quickly
go and look online.
I got a bit of lip from some students the other day, Leon. So let's just let me just get this out of the way. Shout out to all of my TAFE students for listening to this thing. I don't know why they do. Some of them don't play guitar, but if you want to waste a couple of hours with us, then be my guest. I love all of you, and I'll see you on Monday. There you go.
Millhouse cut.
Everyone
Nelson,
except
cut.
Yeah, everyone except Jay. I want to make it very clear. I don't like Jay.
All right, Jay, you dog.
Let me see. No, it's not true. I like Jay. Jay's cool, but he always gets a shout out. And there's another one. So sorry, everybody else. Here we go. Chroma console, flexible multi-effects pedal. It takes inspiration from the eccentricity, grit, and lively instability of beloved vintage recording technology. I wanted to get to the end of a sentence, but it's all commas, so I'm just going to stop it there. Let's have a look at some product details. 20 vibrant effects. Vibrant sounds good. 4 rearrangeable effects modules, stereo in and output, designed for both instruments and line input levels. Sophisticated input level calibration. Record movements with gesture. Sustain and loop audio with capture feature. Bypass foot. Switch customization. Configurable filter effects. Tilt, low pass or high pass. 80 user presets. MIDI, okay, here we go. MIDI in, out, through, clock synchronization, true bypass switching, buffered bypass with trails, tap tempo, which can sync time-based effects. Okay, so
it's kind of ticking all the boxes,
cool,
right?
Cool, but I'm going to be picky about this if it doesn't have... So it's got USB, but it doesn't say what the USB does. I think if... it doesn't really say. I think not having a USB editor for something that's this complicated is a shame, and not for the effect side of it, but for if you're saying there's a bunch of stuff that can learn and trigger and whatnot, that would be way easier just by having a software editor on it. But hey, I don't know this thing.
I will say, watch the video on it and the UX on it. It's great. It's designed to be hands-on, and it feels like you learn a few of the how to rearrange things from there, and then you just kind of go and do it. Are
these buttons here, or are they just LEDs?
These things here.
That's a good question. The little guys.
I think there's some buttons on there.
It looks cool. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's what I'd encourage people to go and watch the video. It's a very well done demo video, and they seem to just kind of do their thing. It's not the typical. We've sent it to the 20 YouTube channels that always put a video out when some new thing drops.
Todd.
Yeah, they just kind of do their thing. And I enjoyed some of the sounds in the video, and watching how it works was pretty interesting. It's one of those things that's, I feel like, okay, I bought a microcosm recently because I wanted to try it in a hey, I'm playing one of these teenage engineering OP1 things and making bleep bloop sounds. And it makes the bleeps and the bloops even crazier. Can I just play some guitar into this and have a pretty good time? And it's a pretty good time on there. Some of the effects, it's unique enough where I can justify it. It's not hey, it's a stereo delay pedal, and hey, I've got an Axe effect, so I'm going to use that anyway, rather than the stereo delay pedal. So there's some cool stuff. Speaking of stereo delays, did you see the Source Audio Nemesis?
Yeah.
Which has been out for years, but they put out a new version with drive-through. And
I was going to ask you about that. I saw your video. I didn't watch your video.
It's a really good delay, man.
I've looked at those for a little bit. Those I think it's the Collider. That's the delay and reverb in one. I've thought about those.
The delay and reverb. I would say the Collider would if I was going to go and buy one, the Collider would probably be the way to go because you get the reverb side of it as well.
Yeah.
And their reverbs are meant to be great as well. But yeah, there's some really cool, again, it's like very easy to use, but it's a bit more like what you were saying, where then there is a software editor that gives you like much more stuff to do.
Yeah.
You can like kind of fully customize it, and there's more presets on there and things like that. So yeah, particularly the kind of analog style delays in it are really nice.
Yeah. They've come a long way, man, Source Audio. Like,
do you remember the old Blocks pedals?
Sure do. Yeah. The old, what's the multi distortion thing? Multi-wave. Multi-wave, yeah. Yeah, that was cool on bass actually for a little bit. But
I remember you doing a lot of having that set up for, because it had, I remember getting it. I think I paid like $70 for it on Clear Out or something.
Yeah, that was, I don't remember where you got it from, but they were all going for basically nothing.
That was like a pedal for that much. And I was like, yeah, there's some cool fuzz sounds in here, but the way you would use it for the octave style effects, and yeah, it was awesome. That bass board with just weird sounds on it. You had the Digitech synth wire on there, and
that was cool, man.
Yeah, you just had like a bunch of buttons which were just like were set to stun.
Yeah, that was a different time, man. That was like 2013 when I was actually playing bass every weekend, multiple times a weekend. And yeah, I went through a few pedals back then, but that was the first one, the multi-wave distortion. I think I gave it back to you and got the what was it called? The EHX synth one. Is it the micro synth or the electro harmonics? Micro synth had that one, the guitar version of that. That was really cool because it did more bwah, bwah sort of sounds.
Yeah.
And then I got the Digitech one after that.
You know what? That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, it was sick. But I didn't know what all because I didn't know how synths worked back then. So it would just be a case of like twisting the knobs, and it was pretty cool. I sort of regret selling that one, but I just wasn't using it.
I've got a micro synth if you ever want to borrow it.
Well, that's good to know. Which one is it? The same one I had? Yeah, right. The
it's a POG size box, right?
Yep. Yeah. The Digitech synth pedals were cool though, because remember I had the guitar one at first, and then I got the bass one in Cashies, like near your place.
That's
pretty
right.
certain. Yeah. So, and then I had the OC2 on there too, which you brought back from America in like 2013. I used that for a long time.
That's right. Yeah, and I remember you using it. You're like, yeah, you want to play like a D below the low E on a bass. You just play the higher D and you turn the OC2 on for that note.
I got so good at that, man. That was one time with pedals I could do it.
That makes so much sense.
Man, when I was doing gigs with you as well, it was like play 4-string bass, singing lead vocals, but when I wanted the effect of a 5-string, I was able to turn the OC2 on mid bass line and sing to get those notes. It was I got really good at it, I thought. Maybe if there was a recording of it, it wouldn't be that good, but it felt really good. That
was a high watermark of your stomping on things while singing and playing career.
That's right. I got that bass serviced last week, or got it set up, and it's actually functional again.
Fantastic.
I've had that. It's a Fender USA Jazz that I've had since 2012, and I think I've changed the strings 3 times, and I've probably done about 700 gigs on it. But yeah, the action was pretty high. It just needed to. I think when I gave it to Tim, he said the truss rod was just completely undone. Because I've treated it like shit. It's pretty funny, but it's always worked. Even I gigged with it a month ago before it was set up, and now it's back in functional again. Maybe I'll put new strings on it. Who knows? Maybe they can just wait.
Yeah.
I've got
That's wild.
I probably should go through a couple of these basses. I've still got Ryan's Kip Winger bass as well, which that one needs a jack replacement. I think it's a bit cuts in and out a little bit, but that's a good guitar.
Right.
Anyway,
I think the last time he played that was when we opened for Kip Winger, and he offered to give it to Kip Winger.
That's right.
And Kip was like, "Man, I don't even have one of these anymore because the one that I had got stolen."
Yeah, that's Kip's missed opportunity. He signed it though. That's
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. A Kip Winger bass signed by Kip Winger. I mean, that's peak.
That's
just peak us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly peak us. There's very few people in Australia that would have been that excited about it, but I would have bought that bass if Ryan hadn't found it. Like had I seen it first, I would have been on top of it. So,
exactly. Moving
on though, Uncle Leon. The other thing I'm really interested to try out, because we're talking about new gear, and then I want to hear about some more of your stuff, is that FabFilter reverb plugin that just came out.
Yeah, I watched the obligatory Dan Worrell video on it, and it looked pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've read some. I've been on Gearspace a bit again, just checking the new products only. It's the only place I go to on that thing.
Yep.
And it's a bit of a like, oh, it doesn't even do this. Oh, it's like not that good. What a waste of money. People just being people. But I thought it sounded very good for the depth side of it in terms of trying to place a sound in a physical space, not just trying to add the like washy reverb effect to things. I thought it at least in the demo was very, very cool for that. So,
and with Fab Filter, it's always going to do the mid-side stuff, and the things that, oh, I just plug my reverb pedal in front of my distorted amp and it sounds bad. Crowd, it's it's not for you, bro. It's having those extra features in there, and it's awesome. So awesome.
Did you see the IR?
And this stuff, the way it works is just great. Like you look at it and you go, oh yeah, but I mean, like Pro Q3. If I have to do something to a guitar channel, it's just like the first place I go, because it does this. Oh, I want a bit of dynamics. Cool.
I still use it
normally,
for everything.
Normally you're done in about 45 seconds. It's amazing.
Yeah. Did you see the IR thing in the reverb plugin?
No.
It does like a reverse engineer an IR. So if you got an IR of, I don't know how it would work on guitars, but like a guitar IR, but like convolution reverb.
The way you just described it, I know the part of the video you're talking about, and I was like, oh, cool, reverb IRs. Yeah, just skip ahead, whatever.
Right.
But
yeah,
that makes more sense. So it creates an algorithmic reverb based on an IR of a space.
Yeah, correct. So it's cool.
Amazing.
In terms of how accurate or good, it sounded cool in the video. I don't know. I'm not going to jump up and down about it because I haven't tried it.
Why don't you drag it in for us, Troy, so we can see the interface?
This is while I do that, can you change the background again?
Yeah, of course. What do you feel like, mate? You feel like some blue waves? Look at this. So, I mean, if it works the way I think it works now, that's incredible. There's a bunch of new fractal reverbs as well, and I just saw they put out another release candidate for the latest firmware they overhauled all the tremolo stuff.
All right.
Some amp style trem. So I'm looking forward to trying that when we finish up on here.
Before we do this thing, can I just ask you, because I didn't watch the video. I'm just being a hater at the moment, Leon. I'm not giving you the clicks, but not giving you the like and subscribes like everybody should be doing to this one. But
exactly.
I did notice you did a video saying why I love the filter block. Is that right? No, not filter block. Pitch block. Yeah. Has that changed since the have we talked about this? Like, is that the pitch block in terms of like making like detuning stuff so I can get a good OC2 sort of sound, or is it different sort of stuff?
Less that and more like, hey, you can get really cool detunes and delays and ambient style effects out of it, and like pog style sound. So there was no polyphonic guitar stuff happening in there, but I should revisit that. Anyway, I'm going to add this.
Oh yeah. The I'll say, like, when I plugged in your FM3, the one that's been here for a little bit, whatever it is, the Twin Peaks guitar sound, where it's like it's a detune, and oh man, it sounds so good. I think it's a Twin Peaks sort of thing.
It's pretty awesome. So what are we looking at? Pro R2.
Pro R2, mate. We have natural sound, music controls. That's all you need. One of the most used effects in the audio world, I don't need to read the blurb, is Dave Pensato chucking his name or something. He probably got it for free. Yep. Oh, there was a story about, I think there was a story about him like just trying to get, it's a reverse, like Manly Audio. I think they have a rule about like, they don't give endorsements. They don't give people free shit. Yep. And then they made a comment about like, famous audio engineers asking for free stuff. I'm pretty sure it was Dave Pensato that they were referring to in this very public, like, we don't give away free stuff.
Look, I've watched a lot of Pensato's plays and learned a lot of good things from it. But there was one where he was talking about a guitar amp plugin.
Oh man!
And he took a recorded, like a polished, like it was a pop punk song or something.
Yeah.
And someone had like recorded a Marshall or a 5150. I think he was using S gear, and then he put like S gear on top of that and started messing with it, and just was like, Pensatoing his way through it, and everyone was like, Dave.
I think I remember that
put
one.
It on the DI, bro.
That wasn't the one, but just quickly, so the Pro full immersive Dolby Atmos is pretty cool. Like to have like 916 in a reverb plugin. I'm not sure how many others are doing that, but I like the sound of that. Not that I'm doing Atmos stuff here, but yeah, that's.
But you might want to one day.
Maybe I'd just buy this reverb plugin and I'd be good to go. So where's this? Let me just find the IR thing. Sorry, I'm scrolling too quickly.
Mid-side, character control.
Spectrum analyzer, decay rate, thickness, stepless space. Oh, here we go. Introducing impulse response import. You can now import IR files, which will be analyzed by Pro R2 and converted to reverb settings, decay rate, and output EQ to match the sound of the IRs as well as possible. So that's kind of cool.
That's cool.
If it's an impulse response, I wonder what would happen if you chucked a guitar IR in there. Surely it'd be
yeah.
Like,
yeah, would it just work as an IR loader?
Who knows? I mean, it's going to be, it's an interpretation. So this from the video that on the video that I watched of it. I'm just trying to find here's the interface, right? It just looked like the blue graph here and the yellow graph were just like all weirdly pointy. So I guess that's how it sculpts it. It seems fairly broad, not like it's very, I think in the like Pro Q3, there's like maybe 24 bands that'll do stuff with. It didn't seem quite as broad as that. Maybe it can be, and it just wasn't demonstrated like that in the video. But yeah, I'm not too certain about that one. So very interesting. I'm really keen to. Oh, and the other one actually that's worth I can't remember what it's called. Just bear with me for a sec. I was going to mention it to you. I was going to mention it to you outside of this podcast, but I thought you might be interested. There was another reverb that I saw, and it is called. You talk for a second while I find this thing.
Well, yeah, I mean the new fractal reverbs, they overhauled like the spring reverb algorithm in there, and man, I really, 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 really like the tube spring in there. It's sort of like, yeah, this is an awesome algorithmic tube reverb now, and they overhauled the plates and the halls as well. So there's a bunch of new modes. There's like this mode in there called gold plate, which is like it's what you want on guitar.
Yep.
Like you just put it on, you're like, yep, done. Next.
Gold plate like that term appears a lot in reverb plugins, and I never really looked into what that refers to.
I always figured it was just an EMT thing.
Maybe, but
like, was there like
they're not gold though? Like the plate itself or the unit, I don't believe is gold. So I don't know. Maybe it is gold. I thought it was just like a wooden cabinet, but maybe I'm dumb.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any gold in it. Maybe it refers to like gold because it's on so many gold records.
Maybe, but yeah, that's funny with the fractal stuff because like their reverbs already sounded pretty good. Like that London plate's a bit of a ripper.
Yeah, I think the gold may have even bumped it for me. It's very, very nice, very, very nice. I think what happened was there was like he overhauled the spring reverbs. Mm-hmm. And using some, physical modeling stuff. So it's like, if you can model physical springs, you can do the same stuff for metal plates. So
right, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of gold plate, vintage gold plate reverb, like Relab. There's this. There's a bunch of other stuff. EMT 240 gold plate. Maybe. Oh yeah, what's going on here? What's this EMT? Because the 240 is a digital reverb, hey?
Yeah, 240, it looks like a jukebox sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or a pinball machine. Oh, not a pinball machine, but it's different.
Yeah, it's such a good description of it. Yep. It's that like late 70s computer thing.
Yeah, it's like late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, go on.
Instead of a flat plate, the EMT 240 uses a 12 square inch gold foil that brings a slightly brighter and shimmery sound. So that's where it comes from. So it's actually the EMT 240, not the 140.
Right. Oh, so you know what? The 250, sorry, that's the one. That's the digital one. The 240, I don't know what that one is.
The 240 is, that's very, very interesting.
There's a 250.
Yeah, I've seen gold foil plate mentioned a lot as well.
Right, okay. Yeah. There's an EMT 250 around here somewhere. Not really in the studio, but like in Perth. It sort of was part of a estate. I think this is fair to say. There's like a local sound guy that died many years ago, but a lot of his gears kind of got sold off. But that one I think was quite expensive, and I believe it just sort of bounced around a bit instead of being sold to a specific buyer.
Yeah.
Because last time I checked, they wanted like $8,000 for it, which it could do.
Which there's one for sale on Reverb for $20,000.
Yep,
so
could do.
That's a good deal, right?
What we got to try, man, is that what is it? That Quad 8 reverb that's hanging around the studio, the System 5, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Which you can't find any information about this thing anywhere on the internet, just about. But it'd be
There we
early.
go.
Yeah, go on.
We should do a demo with it or do an entire episode on it, and I'm sure people would weigh in with their thoughts. Have you remembered the thing you wanted to talk about
I
as
have.
well?
It's a reverb that I thought you'd be interested in. You may have seen it. The Quantum Room Simulator. Have you heard about this?
Yeah. I have heard about this quite a bit.
But you know what it's based on, right?
Maybe you told me about it.
I don't think so. I don't think we've discussed it. But yeah, again, because I'm just checking gear space in the new products. But I'd like to try it. But it's the QRS. The old QRS reverb, which for the reason this is interesting to us is I believe that's like one of Michael Wagner's like reverbs that he used back in the 80s on like the Dokken albums and whatnot. So you want that George Lynch guitar solo sound, then that is probably the unit that you're going to look at.
Well, there you go. There's a there's a free trial of it, so I might have to try that.
Yeah, give it a shot, man. There's a version of it in the the Slate plugin, the reverb plugin, the virtual. What's it called?
I was going to say it looks
VCC.
like that virtual interact
no,
thing,
not
doesn't
VCC.
it?
What's that reverb plugin called? I can't remember. Anyway,
I've seen you use it before.
Yeah, I've used that preset. I've used it on some stuff when I don't know how accurate it was to the original, but it's cool. Like it's a really cool sound. Yeah. It's but this is a bit more of a detailed, in-depth plugin version of it. So
that's cool.
I don't know what that actual reverb is worth, like that unit. I've never seen one for sale, but I also have not really looked. So
yeah. But otherwise, I gigged the DGT SE DGT, whatever way around you meant to say it.
How was it?
That was pretty cool. Really good. I got locking tuners for it. I just got the SE locking tuners and popped them on, and yeah, it was put a set of 10 to 52s. The D string slot on the nut just needs to be widened a little bit.
Right.
But otherwise, it's great. You know, happily gig that guitar a bunch. I mean, I bought it on Tuesday as well, but didn't play it. And then the rubato as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounded cool. That was I got play on that one.
The 6-way switch on it's really, really unique. And the best thing about that, if people saw the vlog that I did, like we went up to Barrow Island for a couple of shows. We went overnight. We did a night gig and a morning gig up there for the shift workers. But
it's a couple of shows.
I only took that. I haven't even changed the strings on it since they sent it with strings. And yeah, haven't changed them yet. I've done 4 or 5 gigs now, which is awesome. But yeah, I flew with a guitar in a soft case, and it was the best thing ever. Just being
nice.
There's no headstock, there's no separate headstock to break, or there's no things like that. So yeah, just having a guitar bag and like trudging around doing the mine site thing, so much easier than carrying a case around.
I bet.
Because, you've done it. You get to the thing and they're like, cool, you got to get your gear out. It's hot. Then you got to walk it all around to your room and just guitar bag on your back. Happy days.
Yep. Mate, I love a soft case. I'm all about it. My favorite soft case, it's kind of not my favorite, but the Fender ones are really good. Like they're really well padded, but the problem, you would find this, mate, like you and me are too tall for that case because the straps sit too low on the body. So you can't walk through a doorway without it bang into a door, which has happened every single time I've tried to enter a place or even walking up the stairs of the studio. It's like I almost trip down the stairs because my gets caught on the ceiling. So it stinks. But
yeah, I've got a bag. The Mua sent me one of their GTRS guitars, and the gig bag for it is awesome. It's like my favorite gig bag. It's really, really nicely padded, and it's like got just enough structure about it where it's, I guess, kind of more similar to like the mono cases or something like that, where they're a bag, but they're also not just a bunch of fabric sewn together. So
that's what this Fender one is too. Like they're all just trying to rip off the mono. I've never had a real mono one because they're too expensive. But have I? No, I haven't. But they look cool. I'm sure.
Who had one? Did Gareth have one?
Yeah, Gareth had one. Probably still has one.
Yep. Probably still has it. Exactly.
Because that was to the G Train.
Friend of the G Train.
But
we're not talking about Fraser Garrick either.
Those were the first cases that I think you could comfortably. People talking about like, I can fly with this thing. It's a soft case and I can fly with it, and it's not going to break the guitar. So yeah, John's got one actually, like a double one.
Oh,
like
nice.
John has got one, but it's like with 2 6-string basses. It's pretty bloody heavy.
Yeah. Two incredibly heavy, thick bass guitars. I saw they're doing the last shows at Badlands as well.
All right. Yeah,
They're doing like a couple of nights or something.
That's cool.
I kind of wouldn't mind actually going.
Did you see
Depends when they are.
like just shout out to friends of the two of us, the Chaos Divine Boys, for putting out their Live at Badlands concert, which I mastered.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I'm looking forward to listening to that. And they opened for Devin Townsend the other night as well.
Yeah, did you go? You didn't go, did you?
I didn't go. No, I had a friend in town, so we ended up going out for dinner. But yeah, it would have been cool to see.
Yeah, I went to bed, but it would have been cool. I thought about it. I ummed and ahed quite a bit, and then the R1 or the one, I don't know which one, but yeah, it was. I'm sure it was a good gig. You know what I'm bummed about is I forgot Mike Keneally's in his band, and I would like to have seen that.
Yeah, far out.
But
man, I remember watching the first G3 video, and like,
yeah, that's
I'm pretty sure Keneally's just like backing up everyone dominating.
There's so many videos of Mike Keneally just being the best person at music ever, and yeah,
him and who's the other, like the fact that Tony McAlpine can play keyboards the way he does as well is unbelievable. Because you know what I was listening to. Sorry, no, you got to punch in because I'm going to divert from Tony McAlpine, Mike Keneally.
All I was going to say is like back then, and this is you and I specifically, because in let's say early 2000s when you find out there's this thing called G3, and that must be the most incredible thing because it's Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and I guess Eric Johnson, which was at the time like lame. Don't want to listen to Eric Johnson. Give me more shred. But because of the lack of access to all that music, that was all like the way that those guys play guitar. There was nobody else in the world that could touch them. It was like nobody can play that fast. Nobody can play that clean. Yeah, no one is as good as that. And then it's just like,
and no one ever will.
Yeah. And then it's like, you know, here's Mike Keneally just doing his thing. Here's Tony McAlpine doing his thing. It's like they're just being sick. And I had a moment where my brain melted where I was like, what? Like, I didn't realize other people could do this. Do you know
You're not allowed to do this, Mike Keneally.
The first Dream Theater that I ever listened to years and years ago, it was like a ballad thing with it might have been an acoustic thing. There was not any shred on it. So that's what I thought Dream Theater was. And I was like, oh, Dream Theater's lame. I'm not going to listen to that.
And then you listened to some Dream Theater and your opinion didn't change?
Then I listened to the first Dream Theater album I listened to was 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence.
Yep. That's a hell of a way to start.
Yeah, it was. And I got into it, but yeah, it took a while for them. And then I got into the other stuff.
It was funny. One of my students this morning, we do a lot of Dream Theater stuff. He's a real big fan. And we were learning something off the very first album they did, When Dream and Day Unite. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't listened to it for a while. There's a song in there I really like called The Killing Hand. And I was like, oh, let's learn The Killing Hand because that's my favorite song on that particular album. They were like, yeah, I love that song. And I was listening to it and I was like, oh, I forgot how bad this record sounds. Like just badly recorded, badly mixed, you know.
Is that James LaBrie still? Or is that before he joined?
No, it was Charlie Dominici. So they had him for the first album and it was like, yeah, it was just funny listening to that and being like, you can hear the embryonic form of what they're about to do.
Right.
And then like and it sounds way more like, yeah, there's some Queensryche bits and there's some Fates Warning bits, but it's not really its own thing. There's some, you know, there's some Rush, there's some Metallica, there's definitely some Kansas. Like when I hear Dream Theater, I'm like, you guys people are like, yeah, Rush, Metallica. It's like, no, they just sound like 80s Kansas when Steve Morse was playing with Kansas.
Right.
Anyway, it's amazing that they followed that album up with Images and Words, which is like still the best thing they've ever done.
Yeah.
That's like nothing else sounds like that album. It's amazing. And the playing on it's still mind blowing. But yeah, the first one I got was Scenes from a Memory because I had a $30 Sanity voucher that my grandma sent me.
Yep.
And I went to Sanity and I saw Dream Theater and I'd only read about them. And I was like, cool, I'll just $20, I can get a Dream Theater CD. And then I think with the remaining $10, I got like the greatest works of J.S. Bach or something. Because Malmsteen said listen to it.
Yep.
And I feel like I listened to about 5 minutes of Bach and was like, true. And then put on Scenes from a Memory and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I still really like that album. So,
well, back in that day,
yeah, I mean,
like
Portnoy's back in the band as well.
I was going to say, I mean, with time is just a flat circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He never should have left, but
Mike
I'll
Mangini
be
was
interested
sick
to see what
though.
they do.
I wonder
Yeah,
he'll just go back to his teaching gig. Maybe he's got the.
I think he's got a solo album coming out, and
Good for him.
you know,
He's a very good drummer. Someone. The
people
Slipknot drummer got
want to
fired
book
as well.
Mangini.
So it's
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I think he got fired. They've parted company. I don't know what that means, but he's not in the band anymore.
That means fired, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think he was with them for 10 years though, which I didn't realize.
Jeez, man.
I was going to say too about Dream Theater, because I think you're the one that told me this. I'm not a massive Dream Theater fanboy, so you have to remind me. But was it with James LeBrie, like he joined the band, he sang one way, and then he got like awful food poisoning in Japan or something, it ruined his voice, he never sang the same again? Is that true?
Yeah. You know how like no one hates Metallica more than Metallica fans? Like no one hates James LeBrie more than Dream Theater fans. It's like if you go online and watch any video of Dream Theater, there'll be like the comments are these like time-stamped essays of like 20.03. You can hear LeBrie absolutely stink it up on this. Yeah, December 30, 94, while vacationing in Cuba, he was stricken with a severe case of food poisoning from contaminated pork. And while vomiting, he ruptured his vocal cords.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so that's like peak when they were peak. Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah. Was it you that was telling me about that? Or maybe that was someone else that was telling me about that?
I feel like I may have said that, yeah. And yeah, obviously kind of hasn't ever really been able to here we go, there's a thing on his severe vocal injury
29 years ago. I mean, the amount of output since then, he's been fine. I mean, and
like the amount of good stuff they've put out as well, like and the amount of turds they've put out as well, like
yeah, I was gonna say, what's the ratio?
Is one of the worst. The Astonishing is one of the worst things I've ever heard. And like,
when was that?
An album or two ago,
right?
I couldn't do it.
What's the one where there's all the studio footage and like I feel like they're barbecuing and stuff and they're just hanging out at John Petrucci's house?
Having a fat time. Yeah. Well, I listened to Train of Thought recently. I remember when that came out, and that was like, I had a friend who was there was a girl who was at my school whose older brother played drums, and he was a massive Dream Theater nerd. And he was telling me, he's like, man, you got to hear Train of Thought. Like, Portnoy's like playing a bunch of songs just on like he swapped out like his mega kit and he's playing like a standard 5-piece rock kit. And at the time I was like, oh, it just sounds like Metallica. But now I listen to it and it sounds sick. And I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of like Recto on it as well. And man, some of the songs just sound massive. And yeah, there's a few very, very good Dream Theater songs on there. It's like, yeah, that's a good one. And then I think after that was Octavarium, which is more like proggy Pink Floydy.
No, I listened to that not that long ago. Well, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because I think Michael Brower mixed that one. And,
right. And they've always had like top-notch dudes doing their stuff. Like, I think the Astonishing, I really don't like. There was another one they did, which was, I think, Systematic Chaos. I didn't love, but then they had a self-titled album again, which is a bit more like Train of Thought, where it's like way more guitar focused, and had some really, really good songs on it.
Well, like the reason I listened to Octavarium, right? So I heard, I reckon this was when Michael Brower was selling all of his stuff, because he went like sold his entire studio's worth of stuff, and he's bullshit amounts of gear. But he was got like, I mixed this Dream Theater album, and they asked me to do it, and I was sitting with the guitar player, and Brower goes like, I have 5 guitar sounds. I can do it 5 different ways. And I went through all of them in about 20 minutes, and the guitar player hated all of them. So I was like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. So apparently he left, like, and just, Brower just sat there for hours just trying to like tweak some stuff up and make it work. And I guess Petrucci came back in the morning and went like, oh yeah, that's good. Let's do that.
That's funny. That's really, really funny.
I love the acknowledgement of like, sorry, go.
I was just going to say, like, the song Endless Sacrifice is the one I'm thinking of, which is, great. There's some very good riffs in that.
I should, maybe I'll listen to some Dream Theater today when I'm driving around.
As I Am is like the first track on there. It's one of those, like, you just put on As I Am and like you get the vibe of the album, and it's like, yeah, this is pretty sick.
I reckon I know that song. I'm sure I've listened to that song. It's been a long time since I've bothered. 2006, that's when I didn't go through a phase, but I was determined to spend a bit of time listening to Dream Theater because I hadn't really done that. Background changing,
like,
everybody.
I mean, There's a bunch of Rush albums which absolutely stink as well, but
Yeah.
they're still one of my favorite bands, and like the good albums are really, really great.
There's some King's X that
but,
I really can't be bothered listening to, but hey.
Exactly. Everyone has their hit and miss stuff, and like you were saying on the last episode, it's like, well, that's obviously important that the people who are fans like it, but with a lot of these bands, like their artistic vision and them doing what they want to do at a particular time is, if they feel like they've achieved that, that's the most important thing.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then everything else is a bonus. So with that, Troy, what I want to do is I want to just ditch over and take this live. So we'll finish up this episode and say thank you very much to everybody for tuning in, and let us know your suggestions for future episodes in the comments. And a little bonus, we're gonna pop on to the live stream and take some comments. So anything else you want to say, mate? While
yeah, firstly, didn't know we're about to go live, but that's cool. Love it. That's a surprise for me.
There you go.
I can't wait. But we've only got about 30 minutes because Daddy's got to go get a coffee. I shouldn't have said that. That sounds awful.
We're going to do 15 minutes live, and we'll take a few questions and drag them in.
Can we just strike from the record that I just called myself Daddy? That sounds terrible.
No, mate. You are Tone Daddy.
Tone
That
Daddy.
even sounds worse, doesn't it? Yeah, Troy, never man,
rubbish.
Tone Dad.
All right. See you later, everybody. We'll see you next week. Peace.